Hi Year 4, hope you are ready for part 2 of Beowulf and the Sea Hag. Let's get started. Beowulf now made himself ready for the fight that lay ahead of him, putting on first his heavily mailed shirt, so strong that no enemy could pierce it. On his head he set a splendid silver helmet that would protect him and ward off the worst of blows. Wonderfully crafted it was, adorned with gold, richly carved all around with wild boars at bay. No sword-swipe had ever breached its stern defence. Unferth, Hrothgar's herald and counsellor, then handed him a hilted sword. Runting, he called it, a sword unlike any other, ancient, tried and tested, wave-patterned, iron-edged, imbued over the years with blood and venom of those it had destroyed. This sword had never failed any hero before. Beowulf clutched it keenly, eager to now face his foe. But first he spoke to the silver-haired Hrothgar, who stood close beside him. "The time has come, great king, to test my courage and my strength. Remember, wise lord, that we agreed before my fight with Grendel, that should I die in your service, you will be like a father to me when I am gone, protecting my hearth companions and sending what gifts you have granted me, kind Hrothgar, to my lord Hygelac for his safekeeping. Being his servant, you will understand that all that I have is his. It will show him how generous you have been, how you keep your word, and he will love you for it. And let Unferth have back Runting, the blade he just gave to me. It should rightly be his again. With Runting I shall kill the ogress or die in a attempt. Let God choose between us." With these words, Beowulf, that daring prince, dived into the lake and disappeared. So deep was the perilous pool that it seemed to take forever before he saw the bottom and felt it with his feet. And that was where he saw the blood-greedy hag of the deep was waiting for him. Ready in ambush, she sprang on him, fastening him at once with her hellish hooks. But although he was caught, Beowulf was so far unharmed, for her clenched claws could not pierce the mail shirt and draw blood. Pinioned and helpless in her grasp, the Sea Hag dragged the prince to her cavernous lair. Try as he did, Beowulf could not even draw his sword to defend himself against the water wolf, nor against the onslaught of twisting sea monsters now slashing at him with their tearing tusks that threatened to rip away his life-saving battle coat. Still he held fast in her deeply embrace. Beowulf found himself hauled to the surface in a vaulted cavern, lit all about with fires and what seemed to be of hell itself. But at least he could breathe again, and he was free of the pressing weight of water. At least now he would not simply be swept away and drowned. Then he looked up and saw a monstrous size of this Sea Hag. He had felt her strength already. Undaunted, he saw his chance. He broke free of her, tore himself away, drew Runting, circled it high above him, and brought it screaming down onto her head. Sure, it must be her death stroke. But Runting, that battle-hardened, all-powerful sword that had sliced so easily through helmet and mail, could not bite his monster's hoary hide, but simply bounced off, leaving her flesh unharmed, unscathed, unmarked even. Never before had Runting failed a warrior in a fight as it had now. But Beowulf, intent on victory, was not in the least downhearted. Rather, his courage was renewed, his ferocity sharpened. Seeing its blade edge would be useless, the hero flung Runting aside and now trusted, as he had so before, in his own strength to the God-given power in his hands. Now was not the moment to be thinking of saving his life. Now would be his time of testing, his achieving of everlasting glory. Anger steeled his strength, fury fired his determination, stirred him to action. Beowulf hurled himself at Grendel's mother, grabbed her by her shoulder and threw her bodily to the ground. But in her moment she repaid him fully, grasping him with her horrible hand hooks so that he stumbled and fell, too weary now to save himself. At once she was astride him. He was at her mercy. She snatched up her dagger. Now she would avenge her boy, her only son. With a scream of triumph she struck, but the mail shirt shielded him from the sharp-edged blade, from the deadly point. Again and again she stabbed and slashed, but Beowulf's blessed battle shirt did not fail him. Without, the Geat hero would have certainly been slaughtered there and then, but God was looking down and saved him, gave him glory. Summoning the last of his strength, Beowulf threw her off and leapt to his feet. And there above him on the wall he saw a hanging ancient war trophy, a giant sword so huge, so heavy, that only a giant could wield it in battle play. But this death-defying champion, this Geatish hero, was boiling with war fury. Like this, he was as strong as any giant, and he knew it. He sprung to the wall, caught up by the sword and at its hilt, and whirling it once above his head, the blade singing out its death song, he brought it down to her neck, and in one blow cutting clear through bone and flesh. Her death agony was swift, and when it was done she lay at his feet, stilled by death. Beowulf's giant sword, hot with the fiendish blood, it was over. It was done. The monster mother was united in death at last with her monster son. Looking about him now in that hellhole, Beowulf saw scattered there the wretched remains of Hrothgar's brave hearth companions, those that Grendel had murdered as they slept in the Heorot hall. He saw too where Grendel himself lay, stiff in death, his life-blood long ago drained from him. There was one more task for this giant sword. Beowulf, the fiercest of champions, finished the task and severed Grendel's hideous head in a single swipe. Way up above him in the light of day, Hrothgar and his thanes, hearts heavy with anxiety, watched and waited by the pool. Fearful too were the Geatish warriors for their prince, especially when they saw blood bubbling from the depths, marbling the surface of the water. Many long hours had now passed since Beowulf dived into the deep, and most now believed that the famous hero could this time not be triumphant, but that the she-wolf, that devilish Sea Hag, had at last done him to death. As dusk came over that dreary place, Hrothgar and his thanes sadly returned home and hearth, although hope now was abandoned. But the Geats stayed, stunned with grief, hoping against hope to see once again their beloved leader. But they all knew well enough by now they would not. Down below the ogre's lair, Beowulf looked about him in wonder at the heaped hoard of the treasures, blood booty of the damned pair. Much good was it to them now. The Geat hero took none of these treasures when he left, only the head of Grendel, runting, the sword that had failed him, and the hilt of the giant sword that had done she-wolf to death. Only the hilt remained of this deadly war weapon. The engraved blade itself had been melted by the hot blood of the doomed fiend that lay headless on the floor. So Beowulf, that sainted survivor, plunged once more into the deep, and with a powerful stroke swam upwards towards the water, unhindered now by the sea serpents and writhing monsters of the deep. For the pool was now cleansed of these vile creatures, gone where the evil goes, where Grendel and his mother had gone, down to hell itself, where they belonged never to return again.